the Everglades National Park, and I came down here a day early. It's Sunday, and I was gonna ride out the weekend in Big Cypress National Preserve, but there's a little tale to tell again. So I'm at this point in my life where I'm not going to be quiet about things that bother me. And so I had an interesting experience. So it was at Big Cypress National Preserve. So I was there 13 days, 2 weeks. And when I first arrived there, well, during that whole time, I basically immersed myself in that park to get good footage of different wildlife. I think I saw more wildlife than most people would see there, because I took the time to like stand in places for hours at times, waiting for things to happen. So that's how I get my footage. And so like 3 days in, it was an evening, just after dark. I think it was a sheriff. It could have been a park ranger. Comes along. I never did see the markings on their vehicle. I just talked to him. But anyway, they pulled up alongside of me, and so I jumped out and kind of came up how they would on somebody that they pulled over. So, but the officer, be it a park ranger or sheriff, stayed in their vehicle, and there was another young lady officer in the passenger seat. And so they just like I said, flashed their lights. So I jumped out, and they just wanted to do like a wellness check, make sure I'm okay. You know, and that was their opening, which I thought was cool. And it's more just maybe they wanted to meet me and see what I'm doing, and they could tell I was a little nervous, you know, because I spent so much time alone. So like, you know, law enforcement, basically I don't want to interact with law enforcement unless I call them or I'm doing something notably wrong where they have a right to interact with me. But that's not always the case. But anyway, so they were nice, and they confirmed that I was okay to sleep along the roads in the preserve, which I knew because I had checked. There was a board on entering the park that said dispersed camping was okay along the main roads. So I was all great, and that's why I chose to stay there, because I felt safe and, you know, legal, not going to be bothered. And so everything was great. And so from there, I just, you know, the next 10 days, I was in and out of the park. I did the loop drive, just immersed myself in this park, and just, I think, enjoyed it as it's to be enjoyed fully. And so, you know, I'm going to do a video on all the animals I saw in the preserve, which I think is great. It might be a little bit longer video, but there's a lot to share. It's a wonderful place. Beautiful sunsets and landscape and flora and fauna, the whole 9 yards. So anyway, in kind of poking around in the park too, I noticed there were cameras on some of the trails, and I thought those were for maybe wildlife tracking, primarily pumas, maybe just tracking their movements, maybe. But maybe it was for humans. So maybe over time they're like, what's this guy doing in the park? So I don't know. You start to wonder. But so yesterday, Saturday, I'm just, you know, I get up in the morning, do my routine, contemplating what I'm going to do with the day, playing some video games, and the park ranger comes up, drives by, and circles back around and parks behind me, and I'm like, you know, what's up now? And so I thought I was good, and so I had I was kind of pulled in off the side of the road with the back of my truck opened up, so you could drive by and look in the back of my truck, which essentially is my home. So I'm a little territorial about it. It's my dwelling. I've had people do peek-ins while I'm doing this nomad lifestyle, which is weird. You know, people, I don't know. You have to be on the other side and realize that this is your house, and like, you know, people peeking in, it's like somebody, a peeper peeking in your house. So it's a little weird, but so anyway, these guys roll up, and I thought, okay, it's going to be just another little, you know, chat, interaction. They want to meet me and see what's going on, or I don't know. Maybe they have something helpful to say. So I look in my rear view mirror, and there's a guy, you know, it's kind of, he's got the, it wasn't camo, but it's like, you know, he's armed. He's got the bulletproof vest on. You know, it's all militant looking, and he's kind of creeping up the side of my truck, you know, keeping his distance. Like, it's like, God, what the hell is this? So I just jump out of the truck, and because he said, hello, sir, and so I just jumped out of the truck. I said hello, and then he kind of stepped back, and he's like, oh, okay. So I kind of, you know, he probably didn't like that, but I'm like, hey, you came to me, you want to talk to me, I'm gonna come out and talk to you. So anyway, so I had my phone in my hand with my it's a gaming attachment to it. So sometimes people get curious about what that is, but anyway, so I have that in my hand, and so then as I walk back towards him, then I see the other officer, and he's full on doing the lean in the back of my truck, basically my house, you know, which I'm very, you know, conscientious about. I don't want people just leaning in. I don't have anything to hide, but you know what? Get your face out of my house. And so I just go right up to next to him and shut the tailgate and close the back window. And then he's all, well, I'm all, that's private. And he's all, well, I can look in there because it was open, so it was open to view. And I'm all, okay. And then, so I kind of step back, and they ask me what I'm doing out here, and I'm like, I'm just kind of taking it easy and just, you know, videoing wildlife and enjoying the preserve. And so then I told him that they were intimidating, and then of course he's like, oh, intimidating, what's wrong, why are we intimidating? And I'm like, well, look at you. And you know, they're all, I think they're just out of touch. They don't realize they're talking to a guy that's been like living on the road, very solitary, you know, plenty of alone time. I don't get these types of interactions, and so it's just, I don't know. I think most people in my situation would feel uncomfortable or intimidated with that type of introduction to, when you know you're not doing anything wrong, you're perfectly fine, and to have a guy creeping up the side of your truck, and then another officer, you know, looking in the back of your truck. It's like you're already under the microscope, like, oh, there's something wrong here. The presumption of guilt was like, oh, something's up here, this guy's bad news, we're gonna find something. That's how it felt. And so obviously that's intimidating, especially when they're all armed up and have all authority. And then so immediately he's like, excuse the language, but you know, swinging his big dick authority around, like, oh, you're on federal lands and I have authority, I have a lot of authority on federal land. So already it's like, that's already intimidation. Like, you know, we can mess you up if we want to, you know. So I'm like, well, okay. And then, so the whole thing was really awkward. And so the younger officer Ranger, whatever he was off to my left, kind of staying back a little bit. So I couldn't see them both at the same time. So, you know, I get that. So you could just take me down if you had to. Anyway, so the whole thing was so bizarre to me because I've never been in that situation or been treated like I'm doing something wrong. So he mentioned something about poaching, that I could be poaching. And I'm like, no, I'm just, videoing wildlife. And then I told him there were other, I think it was sheriff out a few days ago. And then I said, about the intimidation thing, I said, yeah, it's ironic. This is the first time in all my travels, 8 months, 15,000 miles all over the United States. And this is my first interaction with law enforcement. So then right away he sees all, being a dweeb about trying to catch me in a lie. He's like, oh, I thought you said there was other law enforcement out here. And I'm like, yeah, a couple days ago. But in general, being in the preserve here in Florida is my first interaction with law enforcement. So the guy's just being a jerk. So, to me, there's two types of rangers. Park rangers. And I don't know, park rangers, I don't know. I think they have too little territory and too much time. So I think they just, I don't know. I think sometimes they're more tenacious than they need to be. But there's two types of rangers. You got your Ranger Rick, and he's the nice guy that wants to just, be helpful, give you information, and, make sure everything's okay and you're not doing anything wrong. But generally nice and polite, and, you go away feeling good about the interaction. And then you got Ranger Prick. So I had a full-on Ranger Prick interaction here. So these guys came up to me, like, the presumption of guilt was like there was not a presumption of innocence. It was presumption of guilt from the very start, the way this whole thing happened. And then they asked me about my phone, what that was, and I told just, a gaming attachment, and then I like to play video games, and I've invested in NFTs, and I told him, a little bit about my travels and my plans. And so I thought we were going in the right direction. And he's all, do you have any weapons? And so now we're like, where are you going? What presumption of anything I'm doing here gives you the right to like pry into me like this? The whole thing was silly. I could understand if there was like, a report of a dead animal or a body part or, excessive gunfire or, shots at night or something to warrant something. But so then he went through the whole, guns on federal lands, that gives you the right for him to search you. So it was more big dick authority swinging, which was it was hilarious. The guy was, I don't know. So then part of his thing was he said a couple times that he's been shot at twice. And I'm like, don't project that onto me, because I don't deserve to be treated like another shooter. You might have PTSD. Maybe you should be behind the desk at this point, doing something else, if you're going to treat everybody like they're a shooter. But I don't know. So that whole thing was silly. He chose a career path where there's a high probability you're going to be shot at. So, but don't project that onto me. And so, that was more like, oh, we can search your vehicle if we want to. And I'm like, whatever. And so then we chatted a little bit more, and the whole thing was just so bizarre. It was like the Twilight Zone. It was like these aliens interfacing with me for the way I'm living, this peaceful kind of free lifestyle, financially independent, no worries, and to have these goobers up in my business just for no reason, really. And so then the next thing out of the blue, it's like, I thought, okay, we're good. They know. I told them I was going to be out of there in a couple days, staying a couple days. And he said, it's going to get really busy here because hunting season's starting. And I'm all, yeah, okay. And then out of the blue, he asked to see my ID. And at that point, I totally rolled my eyes and said, come on, what are you doing? And I think at that point he realized I'm fed up with this crap. so then it kind of a little more chatting, and it was like, then they left, and so that was that. But I don't know. I appreciate law enforcement. They're the blue line we need in society to keep everything civil. But to me, these types of interactions where, you know, to me it's like a Barney Fifes syndrome, where, you know, everybody's guilty, you know, and you've been shot at. I get it. But like I said, I really don't want to talk to law enforcement, and I don't think it's appropriate for them to come up on people and start pressing before they evaluate the situation a little bit more, and talk to me. And to me, I kind of, an analogy that came to my mind is like, they just have bad bedside manners, as far as like a doctor analogy. It's like the doctor that comes into the patient waiting room with his glove on, you know, ready to do his thing with you before having a chat. It's like, hey, let's chat a little bit before we do the, you know, the anal glove exam. So it's like, yeah, those guys need to take a step back. At least the guy that's been shot at, man, maybe he needs therapy or something. But anyway, that interaction didn't sit well with me. It bothered me enough to where I just bailed on the park after that. I'm like, you know what? I don't need that. So I just blew out of there, and I'm just gonna do my thing and try to get back to a point of peace and let it go. But part of it is just telling my side, and I did give them my YouTube channel so they can look at, maybe they'll see this, maybe it'll be helpful to the guy, and I'm interested to see if they did some sort of incident report on their interaction with me and what they wrote. I'd love to see that. But yeah, I think I learned from it, from that experience, you know. But yeah, basically, I just want to be left alone. Unless you know I'm doing something wrong, don't come up on me like that. That's just, it's disrespectful and rude, regardless of what your excuse is as law enforcement. That's my side. That's how I view it. But anyway, so that's that. But overall, I am gonna do some video editing. I got a lot of footage for the Big Cypress National Preserve, and yeah, overall 99% enjoyable, except for that goober and a half. I think the young officer or ranger guy, he's, you know, probably in training, so the guy's probably trying to impress him too, so there's that psychology going on there too. Whatever. I pity them, because I don't have to play that game. I think it's sad that, I don't know. We'll just leave it at that. So anyway, I survived Ranger Prick. My first Ranger Prick interaction, 15,000 miles, and I wish him well. And I've said my piece. Freedom of speech, I love it. It's freeing. Keep speaking, never stop speaking, or you'll lose it. So anyway, till the next one, Alexander adventures on.